Sabrina 70s comic, issue 13. After some annoying fourth wall breaking narration that goes on too long, Hilda tells Ambrose that she doesn't know whether she should take Sabrina somewhere she wants to go. As Sabrina's crying again, Hilda says it would break her heart to be left at home, but she loves her too much to take her. Ambrose says that's an annual event and they're all expected to show up. Ambrose is told that the witches would laugh at Sabrina like they always do. Why did they use this confusing plot point more than once? I was expecting Ambrose to explain that they would be punished if they didn't take Sabrina there, so I'm wondering why they're going to take her there. Ambrose says that Sabrina is just going to have to learn to live with her looks. Except, wait a minute, she can shapeshift, can't she? She's a witch. Hilda says that Sabrina's father had insulted a witch centuries ago, who put a curse on Sabrina so that she looked beautiful to mortals, but ugly to witches. Because she has no wart, blemish, or even blackhead. It is interesting to hear about a different world of people who think that ugly is pretty. It makes sense considering how different beauty standards can be in other places. But it's still pretty confusing. I'm forced to assume that the exact same curse specifically makes it impossible to overcome it with magic, so there's a limit on how much she can shapeshift herself by making herself look human in her new form. So she can't make herself look like an ugly witch, which would easily avoid the entire drama of the plot. So she can turn into anything she wants except an ugly looking witch. Ambrose says that they have to show up at the event because it's tradition. I hope that's not his only reasoning because that's stupid. Ambrose is tired of someone saying long time no see too often. And Sabrina's tormented for a while because she's not ugly, as she just cries instead of thinking that they're the weirdos, after all the time she's spent around mortals. Hilda reminds Sabrina that when she was small, they would hide her until the beauty contest was over. Then why didn't they do that now? So in this comic, Sabrina knew she was a witch even as a child. What's the point of making this story? It's just needlessly stressful to read about. It's not funny, it's just sad. Why make us feel even more sorry for Sabrina? Was it supposed to be funny? At least that was some interesting new lore. But it could have been explained by just being mentioned in the passing. They finally go home, and Sabrina's happy that Harvey's complimenting her appearance. So she ends the story hugging him and saying she loves him as he's just confused. In the comedy page, finally, Sabrina thinks that the whole class has caught spring fever, including herself. She thinks that Miss Grundy should realize that none of them feel like working. So she puts spring into her thoughts, but that just caused her to say that it's time to spring another exam. How did she screw up? What magic note she meant? Also, you think Sabrina would just use magic to reverse this mistake. Like reverse time. Cause her to change her mind at least. Can teachers really choose to spring an exam on someone whenever they want? I don't know. In the next story, Sabrina wakes up floating near the ceiling, and it's implied that magical stuff like this happens to her a lot in the morning. How? Why? She says that she doesn't even remember what the dreams are about, and she's told they're obviously about witchcraft, because why else would she be casting spells in her sleep? Sabrina says that's so dumb and asks why she'd zap herself in her dreams. Yeah. I hope this gets explained properly if the writer thought to ever call out that plot hole. Because right now I can't take the story seriously because of this very question. If sleep casting was even possible, every witch would be in danger, or at least wake up inconvenienced whenever they went to sleep. A lot of them would have wiped themselves or their family out, like even during the caveman days when they're sleeping. People don't even talk properly when they're sleep talking. Imagine casting magic properly when sleeping. Ambrose says that's got to stop because sleeping in those crazy positions is wearing her out. Hilda says that she should get herself really tired, so she can get herself so exhausted that she won't have the strength to dream. Is that really how it works? Sure, when you black out you don't dream, but if she blacks out at night when she's supposed to be asleep anyways, she'd start dreaming after a while anyways. Sabrina runs past Harvey and plays 3 whole volleyball games without a rest. She goes to bed and falls asleep before supper, and Ambrose carries her to her bed. You'd think he'd teleport her. You'd think there'd be a spell or potion to overcome sleep casting. But it turns out that didn't work because she floated around in her sleep again. Why would that be the case? You'd think that these experienced, centuries-old witches would know the right way to solve her problem immediately. Ambrose gets told the bad news and says that he has a theory. He thinks teenagers are self-centered because it's a time when you want to get to know who you are. Even in her sleep, she's focused on herself. So he needs to make Sabrina more involved with others and acquire a more mature outlook. Since when do stereotypical witches who don't want her to be good care about that? This still doesn't explain how the sleep casting is possible. I'd expect magic to know when the user's sleeping or not, because the brain's different there, or else every witch ever would have inevitably been killed. Why didn't this happen to her a lot sooner? Why wasn't this always happening to her? Isn't Hilda mostly self-centered? Sabrina thinks she's gonna stop being selfish and think of others. Wasn't she always like that? Didn't Hilda want her to be selfish? The story ends with Ambrose floating because Sabrina dreams of him now. So she still casts spells, but he gets zapped. That doesn't make sense either. Well, that wasn't worth it. None of that would have happened. In the next story, Sabrina realizes she forgot to get the milk out. And she makes it fly, but it gets cursed into flying towards her and spilling milk on her head because of Hilda. She bitches at her that she's been doing good deeds for her friends, so that's her punishment. Now, it might make more sense if she was only insulted for this because it could make the existence of magic obvious to people, which would keep the spy witches busy erasing people's memories of it when she's too sloppy about it, which Hilda would only care about if she was punished for it. Logically, witches would get fined by the spy witches every time they use magic in front of a witness, as an incentive for witches to not do it as much, so the spy witches wouldn't be too overworked. But this isn't why Hilda's complaining. Using magic for mischief is even more likely to reveal magic. It'd make more sense if she said it was because she doesn't like mortals. Harvey runs in at a bad time, thanking Sabrina for being a good luck charm to him. But then Hilda's happy with her because Sabrina lied to her. Sabrina walks away and Hilda follows her. Jughead tells her that he owes Reggie $5 and he's coming this way. Sabrina warps him behind a sign, surprisingly, instead of just summoning him the $5. But then he screams because Ethel's here, so he has to run away from her. She seems just as skinny as him, so I don't know why she's called Big Ethel. She's flat too, so that's not it. Reggie ends up being told to go somewhere by Sabrina and getting Moose jealous, so he gets hit away. But I don't see the fists collide with them, so I don't care. It would have been satisfying. I'm too distracted by how unrealistic that looked. Sabrina's asked to hold Archie's hand while he reaches for a comic book he dropped in the water. Archie hugs and thanks her, and Veronica pushes him in the water, calling him a Casanova. It's at least surprising that she doesn't do it until after he hugs her. Because they were holding hands, but I guess she saw that too. Oh, but he's allowed to date Betty on her just fine. Wasn't that the whole premise of the series? I guess it's okay because Betty's her friend, and she thinks she's so pathetic that she deserves to have Archie sometimes. The story ends with Hilda baking a pie for Sabrina because she's a worthy witch after all. She should have known she didn't mean to make bad things happen to people. So it was nice of her to give her a pie for accidental mischief. I guess she figured she did it on purpose. I mean, it would make more sense that she was trying to screw that up. In the comedy page, Sabrina tells Hilda that they've been thinking she should get out of the kitchen for a while, because they could always hire a cook. The story ends with Sabrina being surprisingly honest with Hilda that everyone thinks her cooking's terrible. Then why did this conversation take so long to happen? Wouldn't a witch, who's a bad cook, use magic to make herself a great cook? Wouldn't she have done that a long time ago? You'd think she'd taste her own cooking so she'd know that's terrible. I guess the idea is she likes her own cooking. In the next comedy page, Sabrina says Harvey and her will be outside when Hilda's finished with her checkup by a normal Earth doctor. What, is Hilda doing this for her own amusement? She could have gone to a witch doctor. And I guess this is the first time this has ever been done, because Sabrina thinks it's totally not risky to go across the street to the store. Every few minutes, the allergy needle goes haywire, I don't know why witches would be like this. Then it turns out that she's allergic to Harvey. At least I assume that's what it's implying, because it shows him at the end. So if a witch really hates someone, they become mildly allergic to them. You'd think magic would want to protect their user from someone they hate, instead of weakening them. You would think there would be a spell to get rid of that. In the next story, Harvey asks Sabrina if she's ready for an afternoon at the bowling alley. Harvey talks way too much about his new bowling ball, boring me with mundane talk that never gets interesting. And then his ball slips out of his hands and makes Hilda fall and break her best china again. So she makes him float in the air as he comments on it. Sabrina lies to him that Hilda just pushed him out of the door so fast he thought he was floating. You'd think Sabrina would have told Harvey that they should hang out at his house. Every time, a long time ago. So that he wouldn't annoy Hilda anymore. It's cool to see Hilda so obvious about her powers to Harvey. But they want to keep it a secret that they're witches. And they don't even have Sabrina erase his memory. He just moves on and says that Hilda has his new bowling ball. Sabrina sides with Hilda a lot and gets the bowling ball back, which had its holes filled up with peanut butter. In the next story, Sabrina and Harvey get bothered by a tough guy because they walked down the wrong street. I guess they're muggers, but they don't have guns. So why are they so desperate to fight them? This is dark, but distractingly arbitrary. Sabrina casts a spell to have the bad guys smashed into the garbage can. Harvey ends up overconfident after that, making me wonder why Sabrina won't just erase his memory of what happened. Instead, she closes the door while wondering if she did more harm than good. Della shows up in a new outfit that looks more green than evil. I'm glad she constantly changes outfits though. It's realistic and nice looking. She says that's the time of the year assigned to Sabrina by the Witches' Coven for her annual recharge. So now there's some lore added to the comic. Della has to remove her power cell and take it to the Great Cauldron for a complete overhaul. So witches have a battery? I guess that makes more sense than them not having one. Where else would the magic be stored? She should just say that it's in their bloodstream, because how else would they be born with it? I guess the Great Cauldron is like the giant Great Wand in the Fairly Odd Parents. Sabrina's told she'll be without power for 3 days as usual. It's trying to make more sense. It's trying to make sense, and it's unique. So I guess I should appreciate this, even if it's so new that I can't stop staring. I have to wonder how a story could be interesting when Sabrina's forced to not have any magic. She goes for a walk with Harvey. Oh yeah, he's still overconfident. So he tries to get into a fight with someone who is asking for one of his knuckle sandwiches. And the story ends with them getting carried away unconscious by concerned people. That was needlessly cruel to Harvey. The first story is needlessly cruel to Sabrina. It's revealed that the reason she looks pretty is that her father pissed off a witch who cursed her to look ugly to witches. So she's made fun of the whole time. It's kind of believable enough, because beauty standards vary a lot depending on when and where you are. And it's interesting, it's memorable, but even Hilda hugging her when she's crying, and even the heartwarming ending can't make up for all that frustration. I'm just wondering why the main character being mistreated over and over is considered a great joke. It has to be, or else why would they make a story about it? There's barely any plot anyways. How powerful was that old witch who cursed Sabrina that nobody could undo the curse before she was born? Not even multiple witches at once on the same side. The second story is about Sabrina casting spells in her sleep, which makes no sense. She learns to not be self-absorbed, which somehow caused this, when she's usually about casting spells to help people. And that doesn't really solve the problem, because Ambrose gets the problem, somehow. The third story is about Sabrina's various spells backfiring on the people she helps over and over again. Never seen that before. I don't know why she would try to solve the Reggie debt problem that way instead of just zapping up the money Reggie's owed. Witches have zapped up money before in the comic. Only thing interesting about it is that it leads to Hilda baking her pie as a reward. Though she could just zap up a pie. I guess she's not good at remembering exactly how it tastes. The fourth story spends too long on Harvey gushing about his new bowling ball. Then he throws it in Sabrina's house by accident, and Hilda gets mad at him and fills it with peanut butter. And the final story is about Sabrina's spell that makes Harvey win an arbitrary fight, cause him to become too overconfident again and get himself knocked out. right when Sabrina had to give up her powers for a few days for a recharge. At least it was some new lore, but it was out of nowhere, so it was confusing. Do witches have a literal physical battery in them? I could imagine them having a cybernetic with magic in it. But they wouldn't be able to go to regular Earth doctors without them discovering it, like with an X-ray. So the battery has to be in their bloodstream, like in nanomachines that doctors couldn't find. It makes sense, tries to balance the witches. I have to wonder if the writers just don't like Harvey, because it seemed like the entire point of 2 stories was to make him suffer. It's hard to blame them. Harvey is portrayed as a loser in this comic, and I've heard he's that in the animated series as well. At least his future self is. And that's weird for me after I watched the sitcom Harvey, who was a football player and worked in a mechanic shop. If he was a stupid klutz there, he wouldn't have gotten to keep those hobbies. It makes you wonder what Sabrina sees in Harvey.